Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video I will be demonstrating how to crochet the 3-hour throw, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Please go to the link in the description. There you will find both right and left-handed video tutorials, which are going to be really important because today we're going to be crocheting with just our hands. Well, of course we also need yarn, so we're using Bernat Blanket Extra. To make a throw, and the size I made here is 45 inches by 54 inches, you will need 4 balls of this yarn. You can purchase this yarn again at the link in the description or at your local Joann's. Now, if I set these aside a little bit here, hopefully you can get a decent look at the blanket. It's a little big to try and fit all on screen, so we'll put up a couple pictures here so you can see it sort of as a whole. But if we zoom in a little closer right here, you can see the texture of it. This is the right side of this blanket. I actually did give it a right side and a wrong side. So if I flip it over here, you can see the wrong side. Still looks really good. It just doesn't have as much texture. What I've done on the right side is created these lines going across for a little added interest. So it's still very simple. We're just going to use our hands. We're basically making single crochets, but we're going to alternate working in the back loop and then the front loop only to create these really lovely ridges and this extra little bit of texture in this blanket. And I really did make this one in under 3 hours. I want to say it was closer to 2.5, but I didn't mean to keep track. I didn't realize how fast it was going to go. A movie and a half later, boom, I had a blanket done. So I know you can do it too. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, one of the reasons that you can make this throw in just 3 hours is that we're using not just jumbo yarn, but 2 strands of jumbo yarn held together. So the yarn is going to be held doubled throughout. The easiest way to do this, since we are going to need 4 balls of it for our blanket, is to just go ahead and pull from 2 balls at once. Don't try and pull from the both ends of 1 ball. Don't need to do it for this pattern. We perfectly use 4 balls, so you can just pull from 2 balls at the same time. You just want to find those ends, line them up as best you can. If it ends off an inch, you're just going to weave in these ends anyway, so don't freak out about it, but just line them up a little bit. And then you want to come in, because this yarn is so thick, I like to go closer to a foot on these ends, just to give myself a little bit more working room. Then we're going to go ahead and make a slip knot just as we normally would, but we want to be able to fit about 3 fingers in there. Now, for me, this gave me a gauge of about 1.9 stitches by 1.7 rows equaling 4 inches. So you can see these are very, very big stitches. Now that said, it's a blanket. It's not a sweater or something that has to fit, so to speak. So since your fingers are probably slightly different size than mine, don't freak out about it. You just want to get a fabric you like and go ahead and chain as wide as you want that blanket to be. To make a 42-inch wide blanket, I started with a chain of 21, which I then turned into 21 stitches, which I'll demo here in a minute. But there is no stitch count for this, so you can really go as wide as you want. You could go all the way up to a king, bigger, make a whole rug for your room, whatever you want to do, whatever the width is that you like. But that's about the numbers that I found work for me. So as I said, I've got 3 fingers inside that slip knot, and then I'm just going to go ahead, and I found it a little bit easier rather than yarning over all 3 of those fingers. I'm just going to yarn over the top 2 and then pull those back through and then get all 3 right in that new loop. Now when I'm doing that, I try and stabilize that loop I just made so that I don't accidentally shrink it as I'm pulling this loop through. So then I get those 3 fingers in, yarn over 2, and pull those on through. That's just how we chain with just our hands. Yarn over those, pull them on through. Get that loop up to size again, just like you would when you slide your hook through there and you get that shaft slid through there and it opens up the loop to the right size. That's what we're doing with our fingers. We just don't want our chains to end up getting pulled too tight. So go ahead and just make sure you're working with both strands of yarn at the same time and chain to whatever your desired width would be. Again, for the blanket I made, I recommend starting with a chain of 21. So you can see you'd get there very quickly. I'm going to push these out of the way a little bit easier so it's easier to see here. My big piles of yarn ready to go here. And I've already got quite a few chains made, probably about half a blanket's worth, depending on the size of blanket you wanted to make. So I'm going to go ahead and start working back into my stitches. Now, this is another chance for you to really take a close look at these stitches. This is the chain that I just made, this one right here. So we're going to skip over that one for a turning chain. We're going to come to the next chain. Normally, when you look at a chain, you see those 2 loops at the top. Then you've got the loop underneath. Here, I really like to work underneath that bottom loop because it's going to give us a really nice finished edge at the bottom of our blanket, because we're not going to come back for this one with a border. Now, you can, but I didn't in the original, so that part's up to you. But to make each stitch, we're just going to do like a normal single crochet, only we're doing it with our hands. We're going to go in with those fingers right under that loop. Find that working yarn here, yarn over, pull that loop through, get all 3 fingers in it again. We want to make sure those loops are the same size. We can yarn over and pull that right on through to finish our single crochet. So there's our first single crochet. If you wanted to use stitch markers, they'd need to be big ones, but you absolutely could. So then we just come down here, sort of give it a tug if you need to find the back of that next stitch. We're just going to go right in there. Get my yarn straightened out a little bit here, yarn over, and pull that on through. You just want to make sure you're getting through all those loops every time, that you're not dropping one. It looks like I dropped one, so we'll just go ahead and pull that back out. There we go. I either dropped one or took one too many with me. So just take your time with it. There we are. After you get this first row established, I find the rest of the blanket really goes very speedily. It's just this first row that you kind of have to take your time because you're working into that chain, just like when you're crocheting with the hook. So we find that next one, pull up our loop, get those loops the same size, yarn over, and pull that on through. And you're just going to continue all the way across then for row 1. Row 1 is just simply a row of single crochets. So once you've got your first row made, I'll see you back here and we'll start row 2. So if you started with a chain of 21, at the end of row 1, you should have 20 stitches. So basically 1 less than however many you chained. Now at this point, if that starting chain feels a little tight or a little narrow compared to your stitches, try giving it a good tug. I found that really, it seemed tight until I sort of gave it a tug to straighten out the stitches, almost like a dry blocking, if you will, and it really straightened it out and everything was really nice and even. So with that, we're ready to begin row 2. So I'm going to go ahead and get my fingers in there again and yarn over and chain 1, and then turn to work back the other direction, and then all your row 2 repeats are going to be exactly the same. We're going to start with a single crochet in the first stitch. So we want to make sure now to go under both those top 2 loops, pull up that loop, pull it up nice and high again, oops, yarn over and pull through for a regular single crochet. I need to pull up a little bit more yarn from one of my skeins here. There we go. Get those all straightened out for our next stitches. And then what we're going to do is for row 2, we're just going to single crochet in the back loop only until 1 more stitch remains. So until we get to that last stitch, that very last stitch, we're going to single crochet under both loops again, just like we did in the first one, just to give us some really nice solid edges. We'll keep that texture towards the center of the blanket. So to go under the back loop only, if you're not familiar with front loop and back loop, I do have a separate tutorial for it, which might be a little easier given the nature of this project since we've got 2 strands here. But essentially, the front loop is always the one closest to you, and the back loop is always the one furthest away. And we're talking right now about the 2 loops that make that V at the top of a stitch. So to go under the back loop only, I'm going to put my hand right in the middle of that stitch and just go under the back loop. In this case, it's 2 strands, but if we were using just 1 strand of yarn, of course, it would be just 1. So I'll go ahead and yarn over and pull up that loop and make my single crochet. So then I will just continue to back loop only, single crochet across until I get to that very last stitch of row 2, and then I will just single crochet under both loops. So you can see now that we've got our stitches made and established, it goes very, very quickly once you get used to it. So just continue to single crochet across. Now obviously on a blanket you're going to have many more stitches than I've got right here, but I've reached the end of my little swatch. I've got that 1 stitch left, and if it's getting a little confusing, just give it a little tug, sort of zhuzh the loops around, find the top of that stitch there. You can go in and pull up that loop and finish off row 2. And that is the end of row 2. Now we're ready to begin row 3. So let's go ahead and begin row 3. For row 3, again, we're going to start with chain 1. So I do always, and I just want to point out, I didn't specifically point it out before, I'm still yarning over my fingers the same way I would if there was a hook, the same direction. We want to make this as close to crocheting with the hook as we can in terms of look and stitch formation. So if you need to pull out a hook sometimes and actually compare how you're moving your hand to how you move your hook, that can be a really helpful tool if you find hand crocheting a little more confusing. So to begin row 3, again, we're going to start with a single crochet under both loops. And that's, of course, how we will finish out the row then too. However, for the rest of the stitches, now instead of going under that back loop only, we're going to go under the front loop only. So since we're working with double-stranded, we want to grab those 2 strands right in front and just put your hand those fingers rather, just right under there, pull those loops up and finish the single crochet. So now we can zoom right across, just grabbing that front loop until we get to that very last stitch. So I should be almost there. And again, these are just single crochets, nothing complicated, but it just creates really great texture. Here we are at that last stitch. Want to make sure to go under both of those loops and keep an even tension on your 2 strands. That is one thing to note. You want to kind of give it a tug back every once in a while just to make sure you've got the same tension on both of those loops. But other than that, that is row 3. And that is essentially the whole pattern. Now we'd work that in the front loop only, so this would be the wrong side, wrong side, there we go. So if I flip it over, here is the right side of our fabric. You can see we're getting our lines featured across there, but we've got our solid stitches on the sides to give us a little bit more substance there on the sides. I always like to have that on a blanket. Now, I didn't design a border for this, but if you wanted to go and crochet around the edges, you absolutely could. Exact same technique, chain 1, go in along the side, wherever you like to put your stitches, and you can just work a border right along the edge there, however you like. It's a really easy, basic technique, so you can play with it and have some fun with it, and even change up the position of the front and back loop stitches if you wanted to change the look a little bit. Okay, so all you need to do from here is repeat rows 2 and 3 until you've got 23 rows made, or whatever length you want your 3-hour throw to be. Of course, if you make it bigger, it might take more than 3 hours, but if you go smaller, you'll have it done even faster. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it inspires you to give Bernat Blanket Extra a try. It's really a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed hand crocheting with it. It's got such a great squishy feel. It's really fantastic on the hands, so it's a really fun one to hand crochet. Thanks so much for watching. Please do give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and be sure to follow the link in the description where you will find the written pattern as well as links to everything else you need here today and the right and left-handed video tutorials in case you were looking for the other one. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day, everybody, and please don't forget to subscribe.